The morning sun cast long shadows across Arlington National Cemetery as Marcus Washington approached the entrance to the memorial service. His weathered hands gripped a formal invitation, the paper slightly crumpled from his nervous fingers. At 82 years old, he walked with the measured dignity of a man who had seen both triumph and heartbreak. "Hold it right there," Captain Rick Stone stepped forward, his security badge gleaming. "This is a restricted ceremony. Invitation only." Marcus extended the cream-colored card. "I have my invitation right here, sir." Stone barely glanced at it. "Sorry, old man. This doesn't look legitimate to me. You'll need to move along." "But I was specifically invited by the family," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the growing knot in his stomach. "Colonel James Miller was my commanding officer." "Sure he was," Stone smirked, crossing his arms. "Listen, this is a high-security military funeral. We can't just let anyone walk in here with some piece of paper." A small crowd began to gather, whispers rippling through the assembled mourners. Some shook their heads in disgust, while others pulled out their phones. The tension crackled in the cool morning air as Marcus stood his ground, dignity intact despite the humiliation burning in his chest. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, transported back 57 years to the dense jungles of Vietnam. The sound of helicopters and gunfire echoed in his memory. He could still feel the weight of his rifle, still smell the acrid smoke that filled the air during that fateful mission in 1968. Lieutenant James Miller had been pinned down by enemy fire, his leg shattered by shrapnel. Marcus had crawled through the mud and bullets to reach him, dragging the young officer to safety while rounds whistled overhead. The medal they gave him later was supposed to stay secret, buried in classified files that would never see daylight. "You saved my life, Sergeant Washington," Miller had whispered in the field hospital. "I'll never forget this debt." But someone had made sure the world would forget. Someone had decided that a black soldier's heroism was inconvenient for the official story. The cover-up had lasted decades, leaving Marcus to live with a secret that had shaped both their lives in ways neither man could have predicted. "I'm telling you one last time, move along before I call the real police." Stone's voice grew louder, attracting more attention from the gathering crowd. Marcus straightened his shoulders, his voice calm but firm. "Son, I served this country for 30 years. I earned the right to pay my respects to a fellow soldier." "Fellow soldier?" Stone laughed harshly. "You expect me to believe that?" An elderly white woman in a black dress stepped forward. "Excuse me, officer, but this gentleman clearly has an invitation. What's the problem here?" "Ma'am, please step back. This is security business." "Security business?" A middle-aged man in a Navy uniform joined the conversation. "Looks like harassment to me." The crowd was dividing, some murmuring support for Marcus while others seemed uncomfortable with the growing scene. A young woman with a press badge appeared, quietly filming with her phone. "Sarah Chen, Channel 7 News," she introduced herself to Marcus. "Sir, would you mind telling us what's happening here?" Stone immediately stepped between them. "No interviews. This is a private ceremony." Marcus remained composed, though his jaw tightened. "I just want to honor a good man who served his country with distinction. Colonel Miller deserves that respect, and I intend to give it to him." The standoff intensified as more mourners gathered, their voices rising in heated debate. The peaceful morning had transformed into a powder keg of emotions, with Marcus standing at the center, unwavering in his quiet determination. A black sedan pulled up to the curb with military precision. The door opened, and General Patricia Hayes stepped out, her 4 stars gleaming on her dress uniform. Her presence commanded immediate attention as conversations died down around the entrance. Hayes surveyed the scene with sharp eyes, taking in the crowd, the security standoff, and the elderly black man at the center of it all. Her expression shifted from curiosity to recognition, then to something that looked like shock. "Marcus Washington," she said, her voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. Marcus turned, his eyes widening. "General Hayes." Stone stepped forward eagerly. "General, I'm handling this situation. This man claims to have an invitation, but I don't think it's legitimate." Hayes held up her hand, silencing him instantly. "Captain Stone, stand down. Now." "But General, security protocols require," I said. "Stand down." Her command echoed across the cemetery grounds. "This man is Sergeant Major Marcus Washington, Medal of Honor recipient. He has every right to be here, and if I find out you've been harassing a decorated war hero, you'll be facing a court-martial." Stone's face went pale as the crowd erupted in murmurs of surprise and shame. Hayes walked directly to Marcus, extending her hand with deep respect. General Hayes turned to address the growing crowd, her voice carrying the authority of decades in command. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are in the presence of a true American hero. Sergeant Major Marcus Washington was awarded the Medal of Honor for extraordinary valor in Vietnam." The crowd fell silent, all eyes on Marcus, who stood with quiet humility despite the vindication. On March 15, 1968, then Sergeant Washington single-handedly rescued Lieutenant James Miller from an enemy ambush near Da Nang, Hayes continued. Under heavy fire, he crawled 200 yards through hostile territory, carried the wounded officer to safety, and then returned to extract 3 other soldiers. Sarah Chen raised her camera higher, capturing every word as Hayes revealed the truth that had been buried for over 5 decades. The official report listed the rescue as conducted by another soldier, a white sergeant who wasn't even present that day. The military brass decided that having a black hero didn't fit their narrative. They classified the real story and buried Marcus's citation in files marked top secret. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several mourners hung their heads in shame, while others began applauding spontaneously. James Miller never forgot what Marcus did for him. For 57 years, he tried to get the record corrected. He wrote letters, filed appeals, and fought the system until his dying day. That's why Marcus is here today, because Colonel Miller specifically requested his presence at this funeral. Marcus finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Jimmy became like a brother to me. We stayed in touch all these years. He never stopped fighting for the truth to come out." Hayes nodded solemnly. The paperwork was finally processed last month. The president will be presenting Marcus with his overdue recognition next week, but today, we honor both men as they deserve to be honored decades ago. General Hayes gestured toward the memorial pavilion where hundreds of mourners had gathered for Colonel Miller's service. "This ceremony will not continue until we properly acknowledge the man who made it possible for us to say goodbye to James Miller today." She turned to Captain Stone, whose face had turned ashen. "Captain, you will personally escort Sergeant Major Washington to the front row, where he belongs." Stone nodded quickly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Yes, General. Right away, General." The crowd parted like water as Marcus walked through, his head held high. Spontaneous applause began from the back rows and spread forward like a wave. Veterans in the crowd snapped to attention, saluting the elderly hero they had just learned about. Furthermore, Hayes announced, her voice carrying across the grounds, "I am ordering a full investigation into how this injustice was allowed to persist for so long. The military does not abandon its heroes, regardless of the color of their skin." As Marcus took his seat in the place of honor, the chaplain approached the podium and made an unprecedented announcement. "We will begin today's service with a moment of recognition for Sergeant Major Marcus Washington, whose courage and sacrifice exemplify the very best of our military tradition." The entire assembly rose as one, their applause thunderous and sustained. Marcus wiped tears from his eyes as decades of hidden pain finally transformed into public honor. Sarah Chen captured every moment, knowing this story would reach far beyond the cemetery walls. Justice, though delayed, had finally arrived. As the service began, Marcus sat in the front row where he had always belonged. The chaplain spoke of courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood that transcends all boundaries. When it came time for the final salute, Marcus stood with the other honor guards, his weathered hand steady as he rendered one last tribute to his friend. after the ceremony, dozens of people approached Marcus, shaking his hand and thanking him for his service. Young soldiers asked for his autograph, while older veterans embraced him with tears in their eyes. Sarah Chen finished her live broadcast with these words, "Today we witnessed something powerful. Truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how long it's been buried." Marcus Washington's story reminds us that heroes come in all colors, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, will always find its way to the light. Marcus placed a single white rose on Colonel Miller's grave. "Rest easy now, Jimmy. The truth is finally free." Walking away with dignity intact, he carried with him the knowledge that some battles are worth fighting, no matter how long they take.